You guys ready for a mind bender? Tonight we're going to talk about some pretty cool stuff. We're going to talk about the universal simulation theory, which should be pretty cool. It's going to be a deep conversation. And you might be thinking, well, Ford, you talk about spirituality and Zen. Why are you talking about simulation theory and computers and the Matrix and all that? Well, actually, what brought me to Zen and what brought me to spirituality is this first book I wrote back in 2005, which is called Becoming God. And I wrote this book, which is primarily about simulation theory. Simulation theory is what got me down this rabbit hole. I was so fascinated with the idea of virtual reality and with AI and where it was all going. I was reading so many different books and stuff about this stuff. And I went way down the rabbit hole of it and ended up writing that book. Now, what happened in that time since then, it's been it's from 2005, so that's been more than 15 years now. I've come full circle. And in a way that you're not expecting. So to answer the question very quickly, are we in a simulation? Yes, we are in a simulation. Are we in a computer simulation? No, we're absolutely not in a computer simulation. Awesome, got a nice crowd showing up here tonight. It's awesome. Love you guys. So, where does all this come from, right? You guys, how many out there saw The Matrix, right? If you haven't seen The Matrix, shame on you. But when The Matrix came out in, 1999, I think? And when it first came out, I was completely mind blown. I felt like I was seeing the story of my life in a way. Not that I'm Neo stopping bullets or whatever, but the realization that everything was a simulation resonated very, very, very deeply with me. Because there was just so much about the world that never made sense to me. And that movie kind of put it together. But it's a pretty scary movie, right? I mean, geez, we're at war with alien AIs, and and they've put us in pods to make us batteries. I mean, that's a pretty terrible idea, right? And a lot of you guys don't know that the woman who actually wrote that story, The Matrix, she also wrote The Terminator too. And the Terminator and The Matrix are part of one saga. They're really John Connor is Neo. So that's even more mind-blowing when you can watch those two movies together with that in mind. It's pretty crazy. So where does all this come from? Well, The Matrix is actually a really, really old story. It's a really old idea. It comes from a story called the brain in a vat story, or brain in a vat theory, which was first proposed by René Descartes about, 300 or 400 years ago. And he was a scientist, philosopher, and his argument was that how do we know that we're not just brains? If consciousness is in the brain, is what he was arguing, how do we know that we're not just a bunch of brains in jars connected by wires, being operated, controlled by some mad scientists? There's no way we can actually know. And his argument for this is really, really solid. It's so solid that his argument stuck around for hundreds of years, and subsequently became the story that leads to The Matrix. Matrix is just a more sophisticated version of that story, right? That we are the subject of the whims of a mad scientist AI that uses us as brains in a vat, so to speak, correct? So René Descartes, pretty cool. He was kind of a madman, to be honest with you. He did a lot of things that were not so cool, but a brilliant person to come up with this. If you think about his time period, for him to have this thought was pretty astonishing for back in his day. He didn't believe that we were in computers, obviously, but certainly controlled that's something that reality wasn't exactly what we think it is, and that's a very daring idea. And a lot of people kept going on with this theory for a long time, and another famous person who kind of supported it was an astronomer named Fred Hoyle. And he just found so many inconsistencies in the universe, so many symmetries and inconsistencies, that he, towards the end of his career, this is after being a famous astronomer, said that the whole thing of the universe seems to be a put-up job. That was his quote. The whole thing was a put-up job, like a fake thing. It was fake. It was fake. That after all of his years of research into space and astronomy, he had drawn the conclusion that it's fake. Which is mind-blowing, right? You look up into the sky and you see all those stars and galaxies, and we see this vastness. And if any of you guys live out in the middle of the country where there's no city lights, you probably are able to see the Milky Way. And if you live in a city, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you live anywhere near civilization, you can only see a handful of stars. But if you go out into the country where there's no light, you can actually see the Milky Way, and there's just literally millions and millions and millions of stars. It's quite astonishing to take a look at. And I highly encourage anybody who hasn't seen that to see that for sure. So Hugh Everett, he was another big supporter of this. Hugh Everett came into the picture, and Hugh Everett was trying to resolve discrepancies in quantum mechanics in the early or late 40s, 1940s. And he was a very, very respected physicist and friends with Einstein, friends with all these people. And in his attempt to resolve these inconsistencies, he came up with the idea of many worlds theory, the many worlds theory, which is has been reinterpreted as multiverse theory. So how many out there are familiar with multiverse? The idea that there are an infinitude of universes that are exactly like this one, that for every action, there is another universe created. There is another Earth, and there is another you that looks and acts exactly like you, lives your life, does all of your things, and the only difference is this one particular action that separates your universe from another universe. Pretty crazy, right? Now, that sounds like madness when you think about it. But his theory is held up for over 50 years. He published that theory in 1957. And for over 50 years, it's been a very respected paper, and no one's been able to debunk it, which is amazing. That's the most incredible thing about multiverse theory and the many worlds theory, is that it has not been able to be debunked, which is really, really interesting. A little scary too, right? In 2003, a guy named Nick Bostrom published a paper called "Are We Living in a Simulation?" And that was a firestorm of controversy, because he proposed that we are living in a simulation, and that the odds of us not living in a simulation are more than 1 billion to 1. That's how sure he is that we're living in a simulation. And there's a lot of evidence to support this. It's really, really interesting. The fact that we don't hear about anybody in the universe is not only scary that we could be alone, but also an indicator that one of two things happens to planets as they evolve and get more sophisticated. One, they annihilate themselves, and all modern development stops, and those races keep going back to the Stone Age. They reach a certain level of development, and then a catastrophe happens, and they have to start over again. That's a possibility. And another possibility is that civilizations develop so advanced that they have no need to create simulations, that their ideas about the universe and about philosophy are so radically different, they don't have an interest in creating virtual worlds that simulate their worlds. So that's a possibility. And then the third possibility is that we are in a simulation, a computer simulation. That's it. There's only three possibilities, and two of them are not so good, are they? So a little scary. So the Nick Bostrom paper is really, really fascinating. His arguments for it are quite something. It's been supported by Elon Musk. Elon Musk was a huge supporter of Nick Bostrom's work and argues quite a lot in favor of the fact that we are already in a simulation. So, as you can see, there's some serious people. This isn't like a fringe idea. This is like very, very cutting edge science. And the more that the evidence piles on, including evidence in quantum mechanics, it just seems like the harder anyone tries to disprove the theory, they just end up proving it more, which is just mind-blowing, that we could be living inside of some sort of virtual reality. So the idea is that we could be in a game right now, like some sort of video game, some sort of other video game, and we're just characters in the video game. More evidence came in just recently. This guy named Brian Whitworth realized that symmetry is prevalent throughout the universe. And symmetry is like a mirror image of something, like you ever seen like if you drew a picture and then you folded it in half and then you opened it back up again. So he proved that symmetry is not only ubiquitous throughout the universe, but he was able to prove that through symmetry there was a conservation of energy, which gives it all these reasons why things would be symmetrical. And the fact that it is symmetrical in so many different ways proves a higher intelligence to the organizational principles of the universe, which is mind-blowing. Now, that's not to say intelligent design like in the sense of God. It could be, but certainly there is an intelligent principle to the organization of the universe, which is totally crazy, totally wild. It turns everything upside down, the way we think about things, doesn't it? This thought. This idea that because I moved this book over to this side over here, I've created a whole new universe that's just like me, except for that universe didn't move this book to this side of the table and moved it to this side of the table. Mind-blowing, right? And yet, all the scientific experiments show us this. The way to think about a multiverse is to think about a film strip. So, I know we watch digital movies now, but a movie is comprised of generally 24 frames per second. So it's 24 individual pictures back to back. And when you flip through them, it creates the illusion of motion, right? And if it's a higher res movie, it's going to be 30 frames per second. But maybe some of you guys are familiar with like a flip book. You flip the edge of the book and it's got some sort of animation going on there, right? So every 24 frames, that's 1 second worth of motion in a movie. And the way to think about the multiverse is just imagine that it's just piles and piles and piles of movies. That there's a movie about everything in the universe. And each movie is exactly the same as the other movie next to it, as the movie that's parallel to it. And the only difference is this one change. So if you can imagine these parallel rows of lives stretching for all infinity, a great way to think about that is to think about it as fractality, which is what we talk a lot about on this show. Fractality. This echoing of something. Just like a voice echoes, hello, 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 hello. It's an echo of everything. Visually, in every sense you can imagine. It's echoing in every different direction through time and space, and in multiple dimensions. Mind-blowing. Furthermore, a guy named Robert John, who is a philosopher and scientist and a cognitive scientist, has published a lot of papers recognizing this conscious connection to reality. And he plays off of the double slit experiment for quantum mechanics, which just essentially says that our consciousness affects the reality in front of us, to make it really simple. That the sheer observation of something changes it. And this has been tested over and over and over and over again, and it always turns out the same. And they've tested this with light, they've tested this with audio, they've tested it in a variety of ways. Generally, it's tested using these REG generators. It's called a random event generator, and it's simply a box that either produces a red light or a green light, or it will produce a click in one earphone and a click in the right earphone. And the way it works is he has subjects concentrate on the box and to use their intention to change the light from red to green. It's going to change either way every second or two, but by focusing on it, using their focus to make it only go red, or to go red more often, or to only hear it in the right ear, not the left ear, and just keep focusing on it. And what he's found is that it's far more than chance that we're affecting reality. Even more interesting than the fact that we're affecting reality, he's recorded these events, put them in a vault, sent the results across the world, and then had those results open there, and the sheer observation of those results changed the experiment, which is just like crazy. Really, really crazy. So there's something very, very, very interesting and suspicious about all of this, is there not? He noticed that if he used like 1,000 Zen monks to pray in DC and they meditated towards peace, he did this in several cities, and he's repeated this experiment several times, where he gets a group of a large group of people to meditate on peace, and then there is a significant drop in the crime rate in that city, further proving that consciousness is having an effect on reality, which is wild, right? Really, really wild. And he was also able to show that just prior to 9/11, there was a huge spike in the way that people were reacting on the internet. And he's able to measure these spikes to predict events, worldwide events, through this measuring of reaction. And for those of you guys who are into Cliff High, he's also repeated a lot of those experiments. Further evidence, we have James Gates. James Gates, I'm pretty sure that's his name. He's a scientist, an MIT scientist, and he is studying supersymmetry, which is crazy stuff, and getting into the DNA of things and studying the symmetry of DNA. And he's discovered a really, really interesting thing. In the DNA, in the supersymmetry of this DNA, he's found error-correcting code. Error-correcting computer code at the essence of this symmetry within DNA. Of all things, not just people. Of all things. So he's finding literal computer code at the foundation of reality. When he goes to look, he's finding this that's not just symmetry, it's computer code. And now this is where it's really going to blow your mind. It's not just computer code. It's a very specific computer code algorithm that was invented by Claude Shannon in 1974, I think. And this computer code has been patented. And this is the code that he is finding at the base of all reality. I'll repeat that again. He's finding computer code at the basis of all reality, which is a patented computer code created by Claude Shannon in the 70s. How could that be? There's a few more things that we find curious when we look deeply into reality. And we find things like perfect geometry at the essence, the base essence of reality. At the smallest portion, we find what's called sacred geometry, which are just very, very simple, ubiquitous shapes. But these are shapes that build all of reality. So all of reality is built off of these mathematically perfect geometrical shapes. And as we know, perfect lines don't appear anywhere in reality, but they do at the very basis of reality. at the very bottom. Once again, nodding the way towards an intelligent design. Another thing to think about this is to realize that if we are in a simulation and we go to look for it, what will we find? If we're trying to find the borders or the boundaries of what's real and what isn't real, well, where do we look? Now, this is something we talk about all the time on this show, right? So when we look very, very closely at matter and we get down to the atomic level and the subatomic level, we find that there's nothing there. It's 99.999% empty space. In fact, the only thing that we can find is just the smallest essence of information. We can't find tangible matter. We can only find information. Very curious, right? Another curiosity is the limitation of the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Why is that? Why does light have a limitation? Why should it have a limitation? All of Einstein's theories are based on this, right? So the only reason that light should have a speed limit, theoretically, is if that's the computational limits of the system that we're in. The computer processor can't process faster than the speed of light, which is why that's the speed of light. Otherwise, light shouldn't have a speed limit. Another thing that we find are mathematical constants. They're everywhere, 432 being one of them. These very, very interesting mathematical constants. The Fibonacci. And the Fibonacci leads to phi, but it's to say that everything is made of that. And when I say everything's made of that, everything is made of that. There isn't one thing that isn't made of that. Even the thoughts that I'm using to create the words to say this to you right now are made of that shape. Really mind-blowing, right? It seems like there's a lot more order to reality than we've ever thought. You guys with me so far? And let me know if I'm going too fast, because I know I'm laying down some heavy stuff, right? So another cool thing that is sort of evidence to this computer simulation is the Mandela Effect. How many of you guys are into the Mandela Effect? How many conspiracy people do I have out there? Give me a heart if you're into the Mandela Effect or know what I'm talking about when I say the Mandela Effect. Just want to get an idea of who's out there. Right on. So the Mandela Effect is all of these residual errors in what we perceive as reality. So I think it was about 10 years ago, somebody had realized that so many of us remember things differently. We remember different things about the past. We don't share these things. We've got lots of hearts going on for that. Yes. Which is crazy. If you don't know what I'm talking about with the Mandela Effect, I highly recommend you do a YouTube search on the Mandela Effect, and you'll find all kinds of things about it, which is really mind-blowing. But what it essentially gets to is that we are all remembering reality totally different. And some people remember that there were only 4 people in the car when Kennedy was assassinated. Some people remember 6 people in the car when Kennedy was assassinated. Some people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, and some people remember Nelson Mandela being released from prison and becoming the president. Some people remember Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker having an exchange, and people swear that Darth Vader said, "Luke, I am your father." Like, that was the big line that was like, wow. That was the line everybody quoted when that movie came out. It turns out he never said that. He never said that line. And there's lines in Forrest Gump. There's all kinds of movies. There's the Fruit of the Loom logo, which has been debunked recently. There's the Berenstain Bears. That's right, Scott has the Berenstain Bears. There's a spelling in the Berenstain Bears. They used to be the Berenstain Bears, and now it's the Berenstain Bears. Or maybe vice versa. And Chick-fil-A is another one. the spelling of the Chick-fil-A. So there's all these discrepancies about the way that people think the universe used to be versus how it is now. So there's one of two things going on. Either this is a simulation and these are glitches in the simulation, or it's a psyop. I'll let you guys guess which one that is. Oh gosh, yeah, Scott, mirror, mirror on the wall is another big one. So who remembers in Snow White, the wicked witch, she looks into the mirror and she says what? She says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, right? Right? Nope, she never said it. Go back and watch the movie. She never said it. She says magic mirror on the wall. Right? Some of you guys might be listening to that and going, what? 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 No, it's mirror, mirror on the wall. Nope, she never said it. The one that got me was the Kennedy thing. I had written a term paper in college on the Kennedy assassination, and I would have swore on a Bible that there was only 4 people in that car. I mean, I'm not old enough to remember when that assassination happened, but in college I wrote a term paper on it, and I was pretty thorough with it. And I'm telling you, in my reality, there was 4 people in that car. But that's not true. There were 6 people in that car, which is just, for me, that's crazy. It doesn't register right. So that was the one that got me down the path. Oh, I gotta show you this other thing too. Check this out. I go by the name Ford as a music producer. It's not my real name. My parents weren't crazy, you know. And for me, I used to look at this and I was trying to figure out how I was going to sign my autograph when I signed, because I would sign albums and stuff all the time when I would spin or do a show or whatever. So I thought I would match my my signature to the logo of the Ford, right? So, and I could tell you, I remember practicing it, right? I'd look at it and I'd practice it. So for, I don't know, 30 years, I've been signing autographs as Ford, right? And then one day, about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I look up at this sign that has been hanging on my wall for years and years and years, and I'm like, I don't remember that little curly Q right there. What is that little curly Q? That was never there before. How did I miss that? Because if it was there, I would have incorporated it into my autograph, but it's not there. Now, it turns out there's millions and millions of people who don't remember this curly Q either. But somehow it's there. And not only is it there, but if you look at the Ford logo going back all the way since the inception of Ford, that curly Q has always been there. Crazy, right? I know. Wild. So, between Kennedy and that, my mind was completely blown. And I fell really down the Mandela Effect rabbit hole. So, why then have I moved from multiverse theory since writing this book in 2005? How have I moved away from the multiverse theory? How's that happened? Well, when you start to think about the possibility of there being a completely different universe for every different choice of action, and if you start to think about that as a physical place, it becomes so unbelievably incomprehensible that it just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. Even for a divine intelligence, what an completely incomprehensible waste of energy to do that, to do things that way. Now, I know that we're talking about divine intelligence, so nothing is past it. But I say, even for God to make an infinitude of universes that look exactly like this one doesn't make any sense. It's completely impractical. Even for God, it's impractical. So I started just thinking about different ways to understand this, and the further I've gone down the rabbit hole of alternate theories for this, I've pretty much abandoned the idea of material existence altogether. The first thing that fell away were just some of the discrepancies in quantum mechanics, which when you really start getting into learning about what they're trying to explain with quantum mechanics, there's nothing elegant about it. And to me, and most scientists would agree with me that, not that I'm a scientist, I'm just a dumb musician, but that there's no elegance to quantum mechanics. It's very convoluted, and it's beyond our understanding. And I just think that the universe would be far more elegant than that. And then I started getting into Tesla, learning some stuff about him, and I started to learn about Tesla's arguments with Einstein, and how he called Einstein a moron, basically. I think he called him an imbecile. I'm not sure the exact word that he used. But yeah, they had a pretty heated debate about it. And Maxwell were scientists who argued for an electromagnetic universe. And with an electromagnetic universe, we're not involving the quantum state. It's just a completely different way of thinking about the universe. And it provides all of the same effects of quantum mechanics, but without having to go down this idea of creating an infinitude of physical universes. Now, before I got to the Tesla thing, I started to think that because it's so impractical for any being, any mind at all, to create an infinitude of multiverses, that the multiverse had to be a metaphor. It had to be a metaphor for the compartmentalization of the mind. And that is the conclusion that I reached when I got to the end of this book, which is why I called it Becoming God. I had realized that the only way the multiverse could exist, it had to exist as a metaphor, as a way of understanding how the mind works. Not that those universes are actually there. Those other universes come into existence only the moment we look for them. The minute we look for them, that's when they pop into existence. Otherwise, they just have the potentiality for existing. And interestingly, this is exactly how a virtual reality system works. It's not that the entire city is rendered for you. When you move around in a city, the only thing that's rendered are the things that you're focused on in the game. Everything else is just code. It's not brought into existence until you go looking for it. So I think that the reality that we're living in is more like that. And when you start to really think about reality that way, it becomes a lot easier to grasp. A lot easier to grasp. Then you start thinking about reality as a dream. Because not only does a virtual reality system work that way, but a dream works that way too, doesn't it? It's the way dreams work. It's not like the reality that you're in your dream really exists. It's just the reality in the immediate visual space of the dream. And then as you look somewhere else, a new form of reality is materialized for you in your mind, right? And then I look this way, and then this reality is materialized in the dream. But in the dream of my mind, I'm not actually going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. It's all happening in my mind, correct? It's all happening here. Just like in a video game, you turn the street, it's not actually there until the minute you turn the street, and then it blossoms into existence. And then the minute you turn the street again, what blossomed into existence folds down into code again. Which is wild, right? So, after I started thinking about this that way, that everything was metaphor, and everything was that the multiverse was a model for the mind, that's when my life really started to change in a significant way. Before that moment, the person who wrote this book was a complete atheist. Even though the title says Becoming God, I was flirting with the idea at the end of this book. But going into this book, I was literally trying to disprove God. That was my point of writing this book. And I was interested in multiverse theory, and I was interested in simulation theory. which was the backbone of the book. But ultimately, it was my intention was to disprove God with this, to say that we're just in a computer. But the more I dug and the more I dug, it just didn't. There's just too many holes. There was just too many holes in the theory. And the more I started to entertain the idea that the multiverse is a metaphor for the mechanics of the mind, and that what's really happening is that we're dreaming the experience, then suddenly everything took on a more spiritual connotation. And for a diehard atheist, that was a really hard pill to swallow. A really hard pill to swallow. That was hard to say, you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. And I was wrong. I wrote a whole book about being wrong. I'm only right on the last chapter of this book. I mean, the whole book is great, but I only put it together in the last chapter. And that led me to writing the second book, which was understanding the spiritual nature of reality. But I didn't feel comfortable writing that book until I really got into learning esoteric studies, because esoteric studies seem to be so intricately woven into the study of the mind, the study of a reality's relationship with the mind, that it took me over 10 years just to study those things and to know them well enough to feel comfortable teaching it. And that's what this book is. And this is my new book. So this isn't about selling books, guys, by the way. I don't really care about that. This book is free. It's on my channel. There's an audio book to this book, and it's on my channel for free. And then this book, I'm doing an audiobook for it now. It'll be up there really, really soon. I'm just still in the process of recording it. But this book came out just towards the end of last year. And this book is called The Devil is in the Details. And if you're really keen, you'll see the symmetry between the two books. Not only in color, but in title and in meaning. This is spiritual, and this is mechanical. I'm sorry, by the way, this is mechanical, and this is the spiritual book. This one's got God on the cover, and this one's got devil on the cover. So it's just symmetrical in every way you can think about it. And I'm really, really proud of them. I'm proud of both of them. I'm very proud of the second book, just because it took 10 years to write, and I put a lot of effort into it, and it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So there's that, and I'm excited to share it with you. The multiverse is still a very relevant thing to learn about, because it is a model for the mind. If you can understand the multiverse and how we move through the multiverse, and just very quickly, the way we move through the multiverse is, if you can imagine, let's just pretend for a minute that the multiverse is real, that there's an infinitude of frames of your life. So let's just say that, like, from the time you're born to the time you die is a one long movie. And every second of your movie is 24 frames of a snapshot, creating what you call your life. But every time you make a choice, you're creating a whole new movie. Okay? So if you can imagine a stack of movies of your life, this gigantic stack of movies, and all of the movies are exactly the same, except the first movie has one ending and the last movie has a completely different ending. And then all the differences between these realities are what's stacked up between these two realities. And the way the multiverse, what it says is that depending on your consciousness and your focus, that is the universe that you're moving yourself into. Your consciousness, your individual consciousness shifts from one universe to the next universe, to the next universe, to the next one, throughout your entire life, depending on the choices that you make. Now, the reason that science has had to do so much mental gymnastics to make this make sense is two reasons. They make two false presumptions. The first presumption that they make is that there is a base reality. They assume, because we are in reality, that reality has a base level and that it is ubiquitous and exists everywhere. That's their first false assumption. The second false assumption is that time is linear. And time is not linear, as we talk about on this show all the time. So because they are locked in the idea of linear time, and they are locked in the idea of physical space, they have to perform all of these crazy gymnastics to make the effects of reality make sense. And that includes quantum mechanics, it includes time dilation, that includes all the things that are happening at CERN, it includes the Mandela Effect, it includes the multiverse, it includes the idea of computer simulations. It gets crazy, right? There's no elegance to it. As a matter of fact, the issue with dark matter is a huge indicator that they've made a mistake. It's not that 50% of the universe is dark. It's indicating that they've made a gigantic error in their calculations. That's what it means. So there's a lot of stuff in science that has to be re-examined. And I'm not saying that science is wrong or bad or anything. Science does wonderful things for the world, and it helps us organize things. It helps us get from point A to point B. It helps us understand how things work, but it isn't always correct. It shouldn't be considered foundational, and science says so that's it. No, science is never settled. There is no settled science. That goes against the idea of what science is. Science is a theory until a better theory comes along. And what's happened is nobody knew how to make sense of all these discrepancies. So new theories were added to preserve the integrity of the theory that they had, but also include this explanation for these discrepancies. But where Tesla and Maxwell come in, among others, is to say, throw that whole system out. Throw the whole system of materialism out. Throw the whole system of linear time out. Time is not linear. Space isn't space. Space isn't materialism. The material world isn't real. It's a figment of imagination. It is an illusion. And we know this when we look closely at the material world. There's nothing there. It doesn't exist. There's nothing but empty space and information. They suggest that we live in an electromagnetic universe, that there is only the ether and magnetism. And as Ken Wheeler will talk about frequently, is that there are perturbations in acceleration with the magnetism. So there are these current. Think of them as like currents in the magnetism, and the magnetism is ubiquitous throughout the universe, and it whirls around. It creates these little whirlpools, and the whirlpools are like drains. If you pulled a drain out of the ocean, imagine a whirlpool going down, right? And that spinning whirlpool is always phi. It always spins at a phi rate of implosion. And what that means is the magnetism is swirling around the top of that image right there. It swirls around the red, swirls around the yellow, and as it swirls around, it gets narrower and narrower and goes faster and faster and faster. And as that magnetism speeds up, several things happen. Sound is created. And not only is sound created, sound is the foundational frequency of ohm is 432 hertz. Then that magnetism swirls around, so it converts from sound into light, and that process is called somniluminescence. So sound and light are the same thing. Sound and light, they're both energies of frequency and vibration. Light is just a higher frequency than sound is. So instead of hearing it, we see it. Now, you can keep speeding it up as it gets closer and closer to that dipole, which is the star in the middle there. The closer it gets to it, The light is moving so fast and the frequencies are so dense and compressed that the light turns into physical matter, and that is called hard light. And that has been proven. These things have been proven. All of the things I'm showing you right here have been proven. But it might take 100 years or more for science to catch up. But these things are all the truth, but they turn the world upside down so much that it will take a long time for everything to adjust to it, because it's taking the foundation of science and it's literally flipping it on its head, which means everything changes from that point. Now we can say, how did we get it so wrong? How did this happen? Well, it's wrong because the science of magnetism, the science of an electromagnetic universe, leads to free energy. It leads to all kinds of amazing things. So there's a big conspiracy on why the electromagnetic universe was shunned and why the quantum mechanical universe was promoted. And if you want to get into that, that's a great conspiracy to get into, and there's a lot of legitimacy to it. Tesla was a genius, an absolute genius, and so was Maxwell. And their understanding of vortex mathematics and wave mechanics is eloquent, it's beautiful, and it explains everything. And essentially, what they're saying is, life is but a dream. Life is a dream within a dream within a dream, forever. And there is no base reality. There never was a base reality. So the idea that we live in a computer simulation is also part of the dream. The idea of an AI system, and we're inside this AI system, is also part of the dream. Which is why I think that the adversary in the dream is working so hard to convince us that we are in a computer simulation, right? Because it's always trying to keep the message of satsang a secret. That's what the adversary is doing. It's always wanting to keep this message a secret. But the cat's out of the bag, right? All this evidence is coming out that doesn't make any sense. It's turning all of science on its head. So the only thing it can come up with, just like the scientists had to come up with the many worlds theory to explain all these discrepancies, this is the new explanation to explain the discrepancies. Oh, we must be in a computer simulation. It's the only answer. No, it's not the only answer. Yes, transhumanism. The answer is, this is a divine experience. It's a miracle. It's a dream. It's a dream within a dream within a dream. As a matter of fact, you never woke up this morning. You only dreamed you woke up this morning. Waking up this morning is a dream happening right now in your mind. It never happened. There's only this happening here now. This is what's happening. This is reality. And it will conform to your every expectation. It will conform to what you're focusing on. And it will do this again and again and again. And you don't even have to believe me. You just have to try it. Just try it. And you'll see. And it'll blow your mind. And you'll take little tiny steps. And you go, oh, I'm going to try this and see if it'll respond in that way. And it will. And you'll be like, oh my God, holy shit, it responded that way. And then you'll take a bigger step. What can I do this time? And it will respond. And the question is, how many steps do you have to take? How many times do you have to test the universe before you understand and believe this? Because it's the truth. It's the truth. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird thing to think about. But the alternative to this theory is that you live in a machine. The alternative to believing that you are the product of divine inspiration and that you are the dreamer, an eternal dreamer, dreaming your existence, which is eloquent and beautiful and has all of the scientific credulity in the world to back it up. There's that theory and that idea, or there's the idea that you are just a product of some avatar in a virtual reality system in a computer in the future controlled by some mega corporation telling you what to think and what to do. Which one of those feels good? Which one of those feels like love? Which one of those feels like truth? Which one resonates? Can you tell which one was created by the adversary and which theory was created by divine inspiration? One feels good, one doesn't. So that's where I'm coming from with all of this, and it's a fascinating subject, and it affects every single one of us, and I hope very much that you guys will get into this conversation, because it's quite fascinating. And it's not a cuckoo conversation to have. I mean, you can try to have this conversation with your friends, and it's a great dinner party conversation. Let me just tell you, people will be totally enthralled with it, and you're going to get a few people kind of going, "Oh, that's crazy talk. We don't want to talk about that," because they're uncomfortable with it. And what you can say to reassure them is no, this is not crazy talk. That the brightest minds in the world are all in agreement that it's one of these two things: either we're in a simulation, or it's a divine experience. Those are your choices. There isn't any other solution, which is fascinating. Fascinating. And don't get frustrated if this isn't clicked yet. Look, I've been on this path for a long time, right? And it took a long time for it to click. Many years. But there was that moment of absolute realization. There was a moment of knowing. And it wasn't a delusion. It was an experience that was undeniable. And I can't tell you what that experience is, because it transcends what a human experience is. All I can tell you is that when it happens to you, and it will happen to you, I promise you it'll happen to you, you're not going to know whether to cry or laugh or scream, because it's all of those at once. Because you will absolutely positively know 100% at that point that every single word I'm telling you is the truth. It'll be undeniable. And in that state, all of the messages of the great religious teachers will start to make sense to you. All of the Zen koans will make sense to you. All of the sayings of Jesus will make sense to you. All of the teachings of Krishna will make sense to you. All of the teachings of the Buddha will make sense. All of it will just make sense. And you'll be like, oh my God. And part of you will want to laugh. Part of you will want to cry, because it's exaltation beyond words. And part of you is going to want to scream. You're going to not want to move, because you're going to realize that the floor itself isn't real. It'll be 100% true to you. That's the experience that will happen to you. It will. It'll happen to every single person on this path. Every single one of you. If you keep following this, it'll happen. Satsang is not a belief system. It's a knowing system. It's 100% knowing system. Zen is about knowing. It's not about believing in anything. And it will happen for you. Yes, paradox after paradox. It's all paradoxes. The reason everything is a paradox is because the mind is trapped in linear time. But time is not linear. It's cyclical. Time is all about cause and effect. Cause and effect. Action effect. That's what karma is. Karma is the effect of the cause. And they run in cycles. They're not linear. If you can check out my channel, I just made a post the other day where it was a post all about describing cyclical time versus linear time. It was a cool meme that I posted, and it's a pretty cool thing to meditate on and take a look at. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for showing up. What an awesome, amazing crowd we have in here. I love it. It's very, very nice, man. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. And if you have any more questions, or you have any topics that you want me to cover in the future, just send me a question. I've gotten a lot of cool questions from you guys lately in the comments. But I love hearing from you, and I love chatting with you guys, and I love hanging out with you guys here on Saturdays. It's awesome. It's awesome. You guys are beautiful. I love you guys very, very much. Thank you, Dee Dee. She loved my books. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, guys, thank you very much. I want you to have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. And thank you guys very much for all of the support on Phi Tribe. Phi Tribe has been blowing up lately, and it's been the most amazing holiday because of that. It's been very, very nice, and just absolutely amazing to hear from so many of you guys. And by the way, the music that we're listening to now is 40 Hertz for OCD. I really like this one, so check it out. It's over on the Phi Tribe channel. I highly recommend you sleeping to that if you like. 40 Hertz, by the way, is very, very good for concentration too, and for relieving anxiety. So check it out, and I will see you guys here next week, next Saturday, and I'll put out another edited version of one of these videos earlier this week, and we'll do a live thing then. But thank you guys very much. I love you all. See ya.